grateful that our former Chief Magistrate is here. Thank you for honoring us, sir. MK Ofadi, please, you may wish to appreciate. Thank you very much, sir. And so, Mr. Atunde Adejuigbe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, was also of that opinion that we have a better forum where this matter, this topic could be discussed. Learned Senior Advocate, Mr. Atunde Adejuigbe, you are welcome, sir. Thank you for honoring our invitation, sir. We are still expecting Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. We also have in our midst this afternoon Dr. Folashade Adegbite from the University of Lagos. I would like to state that Dr. Adegbite was my senior at the University of Ilorin, and indeed is a fantastic woman. Please appreciate her one more time. Thank you, Doctor, for coming. Also in our midst is our prof, our brother, Professor Gbenga Akingbẹ̀yìn. Prof, sir, you are welcome, sir. I'm sorry, like I said, it's not our usual meeting and it's not a speech-making day. So you will pardon me if I don't go around appreciating everybody. We don't have much time. We cannot keep our learned senior advocates and our doctor, and in fact, the chief magistrate, we can't keep them here for long. So I'll just hand over the mic to the secretary of the branch to take it from here. Thank you, and you're all welcome.
Thank you, my chairman. Our distinguished senior colleagues, our treasured colleagues, good afternoon once again. It is a big delight that we all gather here again this afternoon to continue the knowledge sharing session from the April monthly meeting, from the April meeting of the Nigerian Bar Association branch. Now, today, we have in our midst distinguished lecturers that are going to do justice to this thought-provoking topic: Coroner Inquest and Findings, Operation and Legal Framework in Lagos State. Now, this galaxy of lecturers are ably qualified to do justice to this topic. And the first that we have is no other person but the former Chief Magistrate, Coroner, Lagos State, His Honor, MKO Fadi. Thank you, sir. Now, to discuss, sir, you can come to the item, sir. Please. Yes. Now, so is the keynote speaker for today's session. Then we equally have in our midst our respective elder of the bar, Mr. Atunde Adejuigbe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Our amiable leader has been a fantastic eminent personality of this bar. He is the current chairman of the Law Week of the branch. Thank you, sir, for what you have been doing for us. He is the principal partner at Olatunde Adejuigbe & Co. As I'm calling on that table, Mr. Tunde Adejuigbe CN, the call of the learned sake, Mr. Femi Falana, came in. Maybe chairman should please try and get in touch with him. I think it's around. I think it's around. Now, we also have in our midst to have a balance of discussion. We have brought a foremost medical practitioner who is also a law lecturer at the Department of Private and Property Law, Faculty of Law, University of Lagos, Dr. Folashade Adigbite. Thank you, ma'am. So, well, I know why I refer to her like that. We are of the same department at the Faculty of Law. And I want to say that I'll be intellectually benefited from our sagacity of knowledge. So I know her very well. So she's able qualified to do just to this topic. Yes, I think Mr. Fimfola and Esia will join us. Now, without wasting our time, we don't want this session to drag beyond 2 hours. And Chama. Yes, go and send it. Okay. So, at this how the session is going to run, the keynote speaker will kickstart the discussion on the topic, Coroner Inquest and Findings. So, His Honor MKO Fadeyi has been a chief coroner for more than 20 years in Lagos State Judiciary before he retired last year. And for some of us that were fortunate to be at the meeting in April, he gave us what I call a tip of iceberg for that discussion. And it was on that basis that the House unanimously resolved that we must have another session of this topic. And so he's going to discuss, he's going to start this topic for how many minutes, Chairman? 30 minutes? Or 40? Okay, 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Thank you, sir. So the discussants will take 25 minutes. Yes. Thank you, sir. So then, after the session, then we'll have questions and answers for our colleagues who wants to, who want clarification on the lecture. So we start now, and I'm going to call on His Honor, MK Fadeyi. Thank you.
Just a quick clarification. I actually was appointed, apart from my normal duties as a magistrate, to be a coroner in 2008. So it's not really up to the 20-year period that my brother mentioned. And I retired from service as a chief magistrate admin March 16th, 2023. I want to acknowledge first the Chief Judge of Lagos State, Honorable Justice Kasim Alugba, and the Chief Coroner of Lagos State, Honorable Justice Mojisola Dada. I actually spoke with the Chief Coroner to inform her of my invitation to be here today. I told her I gave that promise sometime in April, and that I want to do justice to the topic. Why I did this is because I know I cannot be the authority. It's a learning session. I'm here to learn too, and your questions and the answers from the participants here will further enrich my own knowledge too. Thank you for inviting me. Having said that, let me acknowledge that there are highly distinguished discussants here. Mr. Femi Falana has yet to come, SAN, but Mr. Tunde Adejuigbe, thank you, sir, for also coming. I hope to drink from your cup of knowledge. Dr. Folashade Adegbite, you are most welcome to. And to the HESCO of the greatest bar. I don't want arguments about that because I intend to join this bar branch. So, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, in a paper like this, I did a bit of the definings of certain terminologies. So I'll just simply go to where I defined in my own, whatever, the term coroner. A coroner in Lagos State, at least, is a judicial officer who is saddled with the responsibility of investigating cases of sudden or suspicious deaths within that coronal district, with a view to unraveling the identity and the time of death of the deceased, as well as the nature and circumstances of such death, with a view to coming up with a verdict and making recommendations which may in turn lead to the prevention of a future reoccurrence of such death and or affect a change in government policy. When you make your recommendations, it is expected that the authorities will listen and then effect changes in government policy. I won't bother you with the history of the coronal system in Nigeria and all that. At least in Lagos State, I can tell you that we've had different laws from 54, the ordinance of 54, and then metamorphosing into the law of 2003. The one we are operating, which is referred to actually as the 2015 law, was actually passed in 2007. And then the issue here basically, briefly, is why do we need coroners, or why have coroners courts? The increasing number of unexplainable, sudden, or unexpected deaths, together with the now reawakened yearnings of people to know the truth factor leading to the deaths of their loved ones, coupled with the interest of the state to protect lives and property and its sanctity, necessitated the establishment of the coroner's courts. There were also so many cases of deaths caused through medical interventions. We've had people going in for simple operations and then coming out dead. Simple erectectomy. So many little whatever that ordinarily in the past, medical negligence used to be buried with the deceased. Nobody will raise any eyebrow or whatever. But these days now, everybody is monitored. And now with the awakened interest in the topic and the fact that there are punishments stipulated under that law, everybody now can question why did you as a doctor do this, and why did you not do it this better way, or even bring in experts of your own to question their procedure leading to the death of a loved one. We've had cases of accidents, plane crash, and collapsed buildings like the Dana crash, the synagogue church collapse of 2014, etc. We've had assassinations. Funchal Williams will come to mind, and some other not so popular, whatever. The law is for both the popular and the unpopular. It's a law for all citizens of Lagos State. Most Nigerian families of a deceased would prefer to treat such cases as the will of God. This is particularly prevalent where you have people who are religious in nature. We leave it to God is the common thing everyone will say. When deaths occur and we should find out and punish a culprit, we are leaving it to God. It was the way God destined such a death. Well, when someone's death is unknown, unexpected, or suspicious, a coroner will hold an inquest to determine the circumstances surrounding such death. The coroner will consider all evidence and witness statements before arriving at a verdict. For the bereaved family, it can be a long and arduous process, and it can take place several months after the death of a beloved one. On understanding the coroner system, their rights, and what is expected of them may help ease the strain at a difficult time. It also offers them some sort of closure, especially where they suspect any foul play. For the government and the society at large, the verdict, which will contain the recommendations of the coroner, may assist in the prevention of a future reoccurrence and deaths, and this may turn to be the basis for a change in government policy. Okay? Now, what is the duty of a coroner? The coroner, during the inquest, seeks to ascertain and determine 4 key questions. Who died? When did the person die? How did the person die? And most importantly, where also did the person die? It's not as if internationally we do not have precedents for what coroners in Lagos State and by and large Nigeria do. We do have. And I can say here that internationally we have a set of rules that coroners are meant to abide with. Please forgive me, just say no. I must say that the coroner's court is a change agent for good governance, and it is expected that one will seek to elicit, deduce from the reports, the following information, among several other information. Like I have said, what led to the person's death? That is how, not the why. Why did he die? That's not the concern of the coroner. The criminal court, some other superior tribunals and all that can find out about that. Why do we have a preponderance of such deaths? Cultism is a factor. People die every day, and this go unreported. Why do we have such issues, particularly in relation to certain areas? Ajegule, Badia, and all that. Perhaps it will also help government to determine those things that will help to stem such deaths, where those are there. What factors led or contributed to the death? Events, whether systemic or institutional ones, that could have prevented such deaths. Why do we have cult clashes every day around a certain area? Perhaps if we establish or put a police station somewhere there, it will stem. What if we have some other government institutions? Is it because they are not even educated? They are refusing to go to school. Do we have institutions that will help educate them? These are some of these changes. Such events that we record in the coroner's court will help effect. A well-developed coronal system will be a key factor in the aid of good governance in any state or country. This is because its main purpose is to encourage better development, higher standards of care or skills, and also to promote the notion of accountability by those who, by virtue of their respective positions and functions, are entrusted with a duty of care over others. I'll try to keep to the 40 minutes, whatever. In Lagos State, Nigeria, by virtue of the provisions of Section 4 of the Coroner System Law, the Chief Judge is empowered to designate a magistrate not below grade 1 to be a coroner in each coronal district in the state. And we have 7 presently. And may appoint any other fit person. In other words, the prerogative of the Honorable Chief Judge to decide a doctor will better handle this. I can tell you, I handled the Peju Ugoma's case. At the end of the day, I came out thinking maybe somebody should award me an MBBS degree. There are too many medical terminologies, jargons, and or whatever. But along the line, you get used to, and then doing your own job. A legal practitioner too, who must not be less than 5 years post-call, can be appointed to hold inquest under the law, irrespective of the fact that that person is not a magistrate. The coroner system law came into force on the 18th May 2007, and by virtue of Section 93 of the Magistrate Courts Law again, 2009, we have in Lagos State only one cadre of it doesn't matter. You are the one saying this person is a chief magistrate, this person is a senior magistrate, or whatever. By virtue of the provisions of Section 93 of the 2009 law, we are just one cadre, magistrate. That is the cadre. Okay? Now I'll go straight into the brief highlights of the law. Perhaps I should add that the entire idea of coroners courts, and all that emanated from way back in medieval England. Crowner, then it had metamorphosed into the designation we are now giving it. It started from there, and the basic thing that is common to everything we are discussing is that you investigate the cause of death. Why did this person die? And so other whatever. So under Section 2 of the law, the chief judge is empowered to appoint the chief coroner. Section 4, I said, can appoint magistrates and any other fit and proper person. But a chief coroner, we do have one. I paid homage to her, Honorable Justice Mojisola Dada is the chief coroner, Lagos State, and she holds her tenure at the pleasure of the chief judge for 4 years, renewable for another term of 4 years, which is the permanent whatever. So I don't want to be citing laws. Section 40 also empowers the chief magistrate to appoint all other fit and proper persons. A coroner in one district can act as a coroner in another district. For the most part of my service life, I was coroner for Apapa Ojo district. But I found myself, because of my movement to admin here at Ikeja, acting also for Ikeja and assisting some other colleagues who may be on leave and this and that. All in the order of ensuring that at least at any point in time we have a coroner you can always approach to sign relevant papers. And perhaps also I should add that the districts we have recognized under the law are Ikeja, Apapa, Lagos, Yaba, Surulere, Badagry, Ikorodu, and Epe. An inquest commenced by one coroner can be done by another. It doesn't matter. Under the Evidence Act, we all know the strict procedure in having one magistrate continue a parted matter in another court and all that. That is not applicable in the case of. And then of importance is the office of the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Lagos State, who is empowered under Section 7 of the law to appoint here a chief medical examiner. It is not the Commissioner for Health who will examine the chief medical examiner, but the Commissioner for Justice. In addition, Section 45 provides that he may apply to the chief coroner to do any of the following things I will be stating here as part of the duties of that very, very important office. Order an inquest to be held touching the death of any person. Most of the petitions we've received, letters asking for this and that, actually came through the office of the Honorable Attorney General. He could direct any inquest to be reopened, as in the case of, because under the law again, we'll get to a point where we know your verdict can be supplanted, your verdict can be modified by the chief coroner, your verdict can be rejected so that the chief coroner will now write a new verdict. So those of you who are dissatisfied with some of the things I've done, you know where to go now. And then the chief coroner, the Attorney General could ask the chief coroner to quash a verdict. You can imagine where one is really or particularly harsh on the government. A power is embedded for them to say, no, we don't want it. Chief coroner, that will be between them anyway. And then to quash any inquest without even ordering a new inquest to be had. Under Section 49 of the law, which provides that the commissioner shall have power generally to make regulations in accordance with the regulation approval law for carrying out the provisions of the Coroner Systems Law 2015. The chief coroner, what are our duties? Our duty, or his duty now, is to ensure that the state coroner system is administered and operated efficiently under the law, coordinate coroner services in the state, supervise the performance of coroner services in the state, develop measures, guidelines, and policies, and promote reporting obligations under the law. Also to ensure that an inquest is held whenever it is desirable to do so. And then so many other duties, but for time, so let me move on to the important part. As stated earlier, the coroner is appointed by the Honorable Chief Judge of the state and is empowered to receive reports from about any questionable death within his district. He conducts an inquest where necessary and is empowered to issue summonses for the appearance of persons before him. He also is expected to come up with verdict after listening to all parties and documents tendered before him. Yes, there are institutions and institutions. Occasionally, there is a need to drag this army person, general, in whose custody somebody died. Even drag the police, in whose whatever custody someone died. Occasionally, you have deaths within the custodial services or facilities, prisons, and then you want to drag. I can tell you for free that it's not on all these occasions you have, they bring up all legal challenges, and then at the end of the day, you are frustrated. It's not meant to be a technical call, yet they will turn that into a court of technicality when they bring in lawyers, different lawyers, why did you summon me, and then you begin doing preliminary issues, forgetting the main one. The chief medical examiner under Section 7, the law has established the office of a chief medical examiner. The present one is Professor Shoyemi, Taiwo Shoyemi, I think. And it's the Attorney General who did the appointing. He has a tenure of 4 years and subject to a renewal of. What does he do there? The office of the chief medical examiner also consists of a forensic institute with about 4 departments. What do they do there? They perform post-mortem examinations as well as any other ancillary investigations. They establish the cause and manner of death of any person. When we refer cases to them, what do you sign to refer to them? There is a complaint. You've called the lawyer, you know those you are to summon. The next thing is to order the chief medical examiner to perform, or any pathologist under him, to perform a post-mortem examination. At the end of the day, there is no way you won't do that before knowing whether or not you want to proceed, you have to proceed, or there is a need to proceed. Because it could turn out to be, so that person died naturally. It could turn out to be no need to suspect any whatever in the person's death. So that ends the entire till you write your report. At the end of their postmortem examination, the chief medical examiner or any of his officers will write a detailed postmortem examination report with formulation of conclusions, opinions, or testimonies. Formulation. Emphasize that word. I handled the Odua protest death where one lady was shot during a protest by the Odua people. And at the end of the day, the chief medical examiner concluded the person died as a result of the intervention of a sharp missile. I wanted the chief medical examiner to say bullet or whatever, and they were saying no. Because why? At the scene of the offense, we presumed the police who came in almost immediately and searched the entire. I was there, I visited the locals in Co. Removed any trace of the shell of that bullet on the floor. People saw them actually. So at the end of the day, you cannot say a bullet killed this person. And then people will wonder, missile. You know. It's also the duty of the chief medical examiner to regulate and ensure quality control of methods and procedure for postmortem examination to be conducted by district medical examiners. And then see what is the state of the facilities they have. It's important I should note that. On some occasions, see, if a cadaver is not preserved the proper way, if the temperature drops to a certain level, you cannot get an accurate whatever. You cannot. For the most part, we know our people. Before even you say Jack, if a Muslim he faints and pretends he's dead, he will find himself buried. I'm a Muslim, so I'm not disparaging I'm a Muslim. So I'm just saying, and then we have cases of people, initially he has died, their concern is, what do? We don't want to keep this body here. They quickly do embalmment. Some of these chemicals used can affect, and then we don't have that kind of facility to determine, separate the chemicals. We don't have a toxicology lab in Lagos State. Maybe in some parts of Nigeria, I have not heard, but people will argue they have in their states, I don't know. So at the end of the day, you may even not get an accurate cause of death to put your mind at rest. It's the duty also of the chief medical examiner to train and ensure proper certification of district medical examiners. And that is fantastic. Who are district medical examiners? Because the office here at Lasut, the office of the chief medical examiner, cannot oversee the entire stretch of Lagos. We have on the island, maybe at Epe, some other major, but I know we have at Coroner, and that place is also very effective and efficient. Unlike the delays you find at Ikeja because of so many things to do there immediately. Okay, it's still so the district medical examiners who are pathologists to have that duty to conduct postmortem examinations, write reports, and then forward same to the chief coroner. It's the duty of that office to maintain a central laboratory, having adequate medical and scientific facilities for the performance of the duties imposed on them by law. Can they do that from their pockets? For the most part, it's not our problem here, but the law is kind of futuristic. For those who would prefer to perform cremation of the bodies of their deceased persons, you must seek and get approval from the office of the chief medical examiner, who must authorize such whatever. And like I have said, under Section 11 that we have, the district medical examiners, they perform largely the same duties. Deaths do occur. How do you get to know? Is the report of such deaths limited to anybody? Only the police in the past used to report them. People who witness will run away out of fear. I don't want to be entangled in the issue of someone's death at the end of the day to cost me money or the courts. I don't want to do that. Now, under Section 23, subsection 1, there are agencies for the report of death. When somebody has been found or a person has died in such circumstance as to make the holding of an inquest under this law necessary or desirable, it shall be the duty of any person who finds the body or becoming aware of the death to immediately inform any of the agencies for the report of death. And under Section 52 of the law, we have the agencies listed as the police, local government authority who should do more, actually. Dead bodies litter our streets and you don't have them doing anything. We don't have a street that is not under a local government. So the duty imposed on them is onerous. And then we have the office of the chief medical examiner. You could report directly to the coroner or anybody. The whole essence of this provision is to make the process of reporting any reportable deaths in quotes as envisaged under the law easy. Anybody can report a death. The law also makes provisions for the protection of any person who gives information in the case of a reportable death under the law, or whose evidence will be material in the conduct of an inquest to the extent that he shall not be arrested or his liberty tampered with. It's okay. And then under Section 25, the duties of the agency for the report of deaths are listed there. They are mandated to proceed to the place where the body of the deceased person is lying and shall take full responsibility and carry out investigations in accordance with the functions of such agency. They should cause notice of the death to be entered as in Form B. Under the law, we have different forms under different schedules. So Form B, and then in the schedule, and then cause that to be sent to the coroner. They should arrange for the removal of the dead body to the office of the district medical examiner. The law allows that when you bring bodies, no charge should be. Let me pause because you want to greet. Thank you, sir. And then under Section 14, I should move on to say when are inquests to be held. Actually, we have combined sections 14 and 15, which mandates that an inquest is necessary. Okay? Where the death is unknown, sudden, or unexpected and natural, where it was unreported, we have parents beating their child to death and they will quietly bury once you become aware it's a reportable death. We want to know why. And so many, where the death came as a result of a violent, unnatural, or suspicious reason. Accidental or misadventured. Accidental, yes. That one is clear misadventured. I don't know how to swim, I've gone to swim. And then death occurs. An inquest is necessary. Where the death occurred due to self-neglect or negligence by others. You keep an old person in the house, you are not feeding the person, and then death occurs. It's a reportable death. Industrial disease, accident at work, and all that. The entire world joined in investigating the cause of COVID. We learned it was something that escaped at some point from a lab. Okay, so where we talk about industrial disease, God, we pray it won't be at the magnitude of what we had in the era of COVID anyway. Poisoning and other than. Maternal death occurring during or following a pregnancy, a child in care, unnatural stillbirth, suicide, whatever. So I don't want to dwell so much on all that. More importantly, under Section 18 of the law, whenever any death occurs in any custody, a coroner of the district in which such death has occurred shall hold an inquest. I can relate that to an experience I had when I was a magistrate in Kosovo, Yaba. And a superintendent of police came in. You gave me 40 minutes. There is no way. You didn't time it. Huh? Let me go straight. No. Yes, sir. No, I won't go ahead. Let me go to. I'm sorry. And then, What is the nature of an inquest? The coroner is allowed to view the body of a deceased before or after his first sitting, however. The validity of such an inquest cannot be questioned in any court on the grounds that the coroner or any agencies for the report of death did not view the body, and where the coroner himself has viewed the body, he shall certify the fact upon the record of the inquest. And in other cases, he shall record evidence, if any, of the viewing of the body by any agencies for the report of death. Okay? And then the coroner enters his verdict at the end of an inquest. Okay? And then it forwards under the provisions of Section 41 to certain bodies. The Office of the Attorney General, the Chief Coroner, and then the district head of a station near the police station near within that particular district. What are the fundamental essentials of a valid coroner's verdict? A verdict given by a coroner is the outcome of an inquest, which is an inquiry into the circumstances surrounding a death. The purpose of the inquest is to find out all the essential things that are listed. But we do have challenges. Okay? Under the law, there are various penalties and there are various offenses and penalties listed under Section 48 of the law, which provide as follows. Carrying out chemical preservation. How many of us have done that? We've all done it. You want the body to be embalmed. Did you take permission before doing that? Dismemberment or disposal of the body of a person who died in circumstances requiring the holding of an inquest where you do not report a reportable death. That person upon conviction is subject to 15 years imprisonment. Failure without good cause to inform anybody other than that designated by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner is an offense liable on conviction to 3 years imprisonment. But do they have the facilities to hold such bodies? They don't want the body to degenerate. So the fine for doing that is 500,000 naira. Okay? What are the challenges confronting coroners? Underfunding of the coroner's courts. The budget for 2022 was got in December 2022. You can imagine a lot of things we couldn't do within that time frame, January to November. Non-availability of DNA and forensic centers. Certain tests, like I mentioned earlier, such as toxicology and ballistic tests, are still carried out outside the shores of Nigeria. Little or no understanding of the coroner system by lawyers. Yes. But I'm happy. This knowledge sharing method is another way of expanding the cost of knowledge so that we now know. A lot of the issues that we usually will have taken to the normal court that will take years to finish can be done actually at the level of the coroner's court. Little or no public awareness, disobedience of some of them. We are not taking action in relation to some of the recommendations made. They are good on paper. You can recommend. Your duty stops there. The authority you have sent your document to, how are they responding? You don't know. They ignore you simply. Certain key witnesses. Can you bring the chief of army staff to come and testify even when you know he's the one you need in such cases? What about the IG of police? Okay. We have instances where some of these will put impediments on your route such that it's difficult for you to get them to appear before you. But thanks to the efforts of so many lawyers, particularly Mr. Femi Falana, SAN, he has done a lot to fight for the rights of the indigent and some of these other people with little voice. And due to his activities too, a lot of the institutions we have are now obeying the orders of the coroner's court. Administrative challenges which relate to the smooth and seamless running of the agency among the coroners, the agencies for the report of death. I've not had an agency for the report of death except the police of the 4 listed coming in to report. When they pick dead bodies, they just take and dump. And then the person is forgotten. Many people who have been declared missing are actually people who are found dead, whether as a result of any external action by some other persons or ill health or whatever. They just go like that. I have gone into the time of some other discussants. I'm sure as we discuss, there will be so many things that will come out to that I'm going to be adding to the paper I have presented. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I did not hold myself out as an expert. The experts are the ones who talk.
Why the evidence? Why the evidence keynote speaker was on? We have some distinguished personalities in our midst that came from the office of Attorney General of Lagos State, particularly DPP. We have Mrs. Ade Adeyemo. Also, we have Mr. Akin George, Deputy Director, Head, Coroner Unit, Directorate of Public Prosecution, DPP. Thank you, sir. Then we also have Mr. Sheung Akinde, the Councillor of the Coroner Unit of DPP. Thank you. Then we have Mrs. Ade Adeyemo, our former Executive Secretary, Law Reform Commission. Thank you. Yes, so that I would not waste at the time of this August session, I just want to say that the session is being covered live through our YouTube, and also is a hybrid. So we have a Zoom link for those that are on the NBA platforms. So now, I will now call on our distinguished elder statesman of the branch, Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, to share his thoughts on this thought-provoking topic. Thank you, sir.
Fellow discussants, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, mine will be from perhaps the practical aspect of what we are discussing, because the keynote speaker has dwelt in extenso on the provisions of the law. I've taken part in a number, because one thing I've found very disturbing in our society is that we campaign for laws as lawyers, as activists, and when the laws are enacted, we hardly seek to enforce them. And if we don't as lawyers, who is going to do that in the society? Now, as you have been told, the main purpose of the coroner's inquest is to inquire into the cause or causes of unnatural deaths, accidents, violent deaths, and the rest of them. And there are very many in the society. And they occur on a regular basis. What do we do as concerned citizens when you read about them? It's not to wait in your office and say, I'm expecting people to bring complaints. No. Because when a person dies in our society, sometimes on the basis of cultural reasons or religious reasons, you say you have handed over everything to the Almighty God. And go, even if you know the killer of your close relation, you say, God will judge. And by the time God is going to judge, none of us will be around. So, but what we try to do, a man came to me all the way from Delta. I want to know the cause of the death of my son. And I was quite impressed. I said, are you aware that whatever investigation that may be carried out, you are not going to have back your son? He said, yes. But I don't want it to happen to the children of other people. And I embraced him. Because we had already written to the coroner, can we have an inquest? So when it was published, he decided to call on our office. And I'm talking of the Dowen College incident. Mr. George is taking part, representing the state government. Now, you had it covers air tragedy, like the Dana crash. We had to write to the coroner because there were people who were in their homes and a plane descended on them. People died. And so we had to escalate the crisis and got a coroner appointed to investigate. Of course, our keynote speaker was the coroner appointed by the state government. We sat for months. Lawyers came. And somebody asked me the first day, Mr. Falano, does the coroner have the power to investigate air crash? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, that is aviation. Covered by exclusive legislatively. I said, no. We are talking of occurrence of death in Lagos State. It's not a federal matter. It's like murder. You can't make it a federal offense. So the Lagos State government has the power. Because the incident occurred in Lagos State. So he was going to raise an objection. He said, no, don't ridicule yourself. You're a senior advocate of Nigeria. Go and read your authorities. And we exchanged notes. And he came back to say, Femi, I'm dropping my objection. I said, you better do. So, any death in Lagos that is unnatural, violent, accidental, and you want to know the cause, you have the right to ask the coroner to intervene. The second one, we had an accident on Otedola Bridge, and about 40 people were killed. Some trailers, just fell on vehicles and fire. It was a fire incident. An inferno. So we had to ask the coroner to come here. And of course, it was investigated and we discovered the owners of the tankers, and we had to ask for compensation and possible prosecution. We're also involved in one now. We have just written to the state government. Because all of us, this was not the society that we used to know. There was a society that cared for everybody. In fact, the late Aisholari, in order to challenge the recklessness and negligence of government, will pick up dead bodies and dump them either in the secretariat or of the state government or a local government to force the government to act. There was an accident here recently, and all of us, we have moved on. The train crash, we have moved on. about 10 people have died. They reported 2 or 3. We visited some of them in the hospital. Of course, we know the cause of death, recklessness of the driver. But that is not all. For all of us, or for many people who grew up in Lagos, you know that when a train is coming, there will be somebody with a red flag that will lower a barrier. And once the train goes away, because there will be a madman who will say, let me move very quickly before the thing descends on him. So the railway management, like other government officials, when they have to blame the driver, I say, yes, you are right, but it's a case of contributory negligence. So we have written to the Attorney General, and we have given the Attorney General 2 names, the MD and the manager in Lagos. Can you have these people prosecuted like the driver for their criminal negligence? And if that is not going to take place, we are going to court. Now, there was also a protest in Lagos here. Again, I think you were involved, sir. This Yoruba Nation Rally. I think Boho will call it Yoruba Nation Rally. A guy was killed. And the police said we were not involved. That maybe he was shot dead by fellow demonstrators. So, okay. Since there was a controversy, somebody had died, we asked the coroner to intervene. And Leonard Collegia was asked to invest. And as usual, he carried out a thorough investigation and discovered that the bullet could only have come from the police. Now, we are pursuing the recommendation. The other one, apart from Dowen, that will interest you. The Dowen thing happened last year, and we are worried that it had dragged on for too long. So we have just written out, please, can you allow council to write the addresses so that you can make your recommendation? But while that was still going on, you had the incident in Chrisland, where the autopsy has said the guy was electrocuted. Now, we're also investigating that. But what will bother you is the attempt by those who should sympathize with parents to try and give some explanations that can even provoke people. And in this society, when a person dies, arising from negligence, the immediate thing you do is to contact the family. Sometimes you go with your pastors and elders in the place. But when you read in the papers that your daughter or your son in a school had died, and sometimes you are being blamed, it can be extremely terrible. And that is why the government comes in to ask for inquest. And the whole idea is also to diffuse tension and ensure that people don't attack themselves. Because if I believe, oh, you kill my son recklessly, I am going to attack you. But the government comes in to investigate, the coroner does not have the power under that law to even recommend somebody to be prosecuted. Because it's a fact-finding process where the government would then study the report. And if there is sufficient evidence, you go and prosecute. For me, I don't think the report should be submitted to the government, the executive. I don't think so. Because the coroner is a magistrate, a chief magistrate. The executive did not set up the inquest, there is a chief coroner in Lagos State appointed by law, by the chief judge. So, and a magistrate is appointed, investigate. For me, that report should be submitted to the judiciary. If the CJ, the report is submitted to the CJ, and there are allegations, the police may then be involved to complete investigation, and the file is then sent to the ministry. So I believe that in talking about separation of powers, the body that set up this panel should be able to make appropriate recommendations. Because there are times when there are problems. I won't mention a name here. An incident happened. The Ministry of Justice, again I won't mention the state, made a recommendation that the following 3 people should be prosecuted for criminal negligence in a particular school. Causes of death are investigated in our society. I read a story this morning, very terrible. And all of us must also educate people in our neighborhood. 4 kids were playing. Their big sister was a bit careless, and 3 kids enter into a jeep, and one of them locked. They didn't know how to come out, and they were suffocated to death in Lagos here, like yesterday also. Now, the girl that was conscious enough couldn't go to the parents that these kids have been locked up in a vehicle so that she won't be beaten up. Unfortunately, they died. Now, the cause is known. So you don't need a coroner in that kind of situation. We're also handling one, unfortunately, where a wild dog, again, you have to be very careful with your dogs, ate a child, a baby of about 4 months, ate. So we have such situations where we must show interest in what happened. If we don't, we run into problems. People attack each other. The one I've just told you about now, but for the neighbors, the owner of that vehicle will have been killed. Because, in this society, maybe it was for ritual or whatever, you attack people. And that is why all of us, particularly as lawyers, must be more concerned in our neighborhood to educate people and let them know if there is an accident or a death that is unknown, we can get the government to intervene and make appropriate recommendations. And in all of them, lessons are learned. I can tell you in the case of Dowen, even though we haven't completed the inquest, things can never be the same in that school again. Because the government had insisted. The government just suddenly woke up. These gadgets must be installed in your school. You can't be paying so much. Parents cannot be paying so much. And you don't have an effective health center. And you don't have CCTV cameras. And so on and so forth. And by the time we conducted a visit to the local school, we saw that a lot of changes are taking place in that school. The same thing is going to happen in the case of Chrisland. How can you take out students? 500, 1,000 for a sports event, and there is no ambulance. Anything can happen, even for elderly people, not to talk of children. Once there is no ambulance, by the time you are now trying to take an injured person to a hospital, with traffic in Lagos, we're in trouble. And so that is one thing that everybody has agreed already. Can you have a stadium? You take them from Okwebi to Agege Stadium. And by the time you are taking the child to the hospital, which hospital a health center, not registered. We can't find the doctor now. So, but unless you have an inquest, you will not know what happens with respect to the recklessness of hospitals, members of the public, and even the government. When we were growing up, we had school inspectors. And you know, the day the inspector will visit a school, it's always a civil war between the management and the staff. Any dirty student will be cleaned up, your teeth, everything. And by the time the inspector enters your school, it was as if Jesus Christ has arrived. But these days, schools are not inspected. Once you collect your money, you don't care with respect to the welfare of your students. But the government, because of some of these incidents now, the government is waking up. And it's not limited to Nigeria. That's my last point. A few years ago, I think 2013, a Nigerian, a 15-year-old boy, was in a school in Tema, in Ghana. They went for excursion. In Ghana, you don't swim on Tuesdays. It's a cultural thing. You don't go out to swim on Tuesdays. So this teacher took the students out on Tuesday. And this boy said, I do not know how to swim. So he was eventually compelled to swim. And the boy unfortunately got drowned. The parents came to me. The parents were in Nigeria. If in the first place, I blamed them. Unfortunately, you've lost your child. But how could you have thrown a 13-year-old boy to a school in Ghana? But unfortunately, it has happened. Since you have come, we must pursue it. And we went to the ECOWAS court. We dragged Ghana to the government of Ghana to the ECOWAS court. And Ghana, the Attorney General came and said, why are we involved? It was a private school. I said, no. It's not a private school. You have a duty as a government to ensure that you save the lives of everybody in Ghana. Everybody. The lives of all people in Ghana. And of course, the ECOWAS came to the conclusion that whereas the government of Ghana has not been indicted, but for the failure of the government to carry out an investigation like Inquest and punish those who were responsible for the drowning of the boy, the government of Ghana was asked to pay $250,000 to the parents. Oh, yes. The government wasn't going to pay. But I think I met the current president one day, President Dodo Akufo-Addo. He's a senior lawyer. I said, my friend, come. The former Attorney General of Ghana, we have this judgment against Ghana. What are you doing about it? He said, well, got a copy and said, was Ghana represented? I said, yes, look at page 3, sir, by the Attorney General of Ghana. Okay. But Femi, you know, we are not as rich as Nigeria. We have to negotiate. Of course, we eventually negotiated and it came down to $150,000, which they paid to the parents. But you know, again, even though it was pro bono, the parents said, you know, also contribution to your work. We will give out 10%, you know. So, along the way, I want to suggest that we as lawyers must please educate our neighbors. We must also forget sitting down in your office. If there's any death around you and you think the cause is unknown, please just a letter to the chief coroner, and the coroner will be appointed and an inquest will be carried out. Thank you very much.
A usual masterpiece from the FF himself. Thank you, sir. To take the discussion further, I would like to call on another elder statesman of this branch, Mr. Tunde Adejiwe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Well, let me start by saying that Coroner Inquest is not oil and gas. So you need to know that from the beginning, because many of us are possibly looking for something that will bring in the money quickly, and that is why many people may not be interested. And it's good for you to know that. However, it is a responsibility that we owe the society. More often than not, you will discover that you hardly hear about Coroner Inquest for the rich. Because most times, what caused the death of the rich is well known. So, in most cases, it has to do with the less privileged who are not in a position to fight for themselves. And so we need to know that. But let me start also in saying that part of the thing we need to know is that Coroner Inquest is not a trial. So it's not adversarial as we are trained to do. It is inquisitorial. And that is important because one of the things that slows down the inquest in our system is that we go into it with the mindset of litigation. So when you go into it with the mindset of litigation, you go there with, if they ask this, I will object. If they ask that, I will object. So in the process, the coroner continues to write short ruling, and that becomes a problem. And when that goes on, I've been on inquest now since April 2022, and we've not concluded. Now, when you look at that, chances are that along the line, there's weariness for the family members. That, do we want to continue all this? Where will it lead to? And some may stop coming, and they lose interest totally. So part of the thing that I believe that the system needs to address is the fact that when you have an inquest, there has to be a time frame for that hearing. Now, Section 49 of the Coroner's Law of Lagos State actually gives the Attorney General the power to make regulations, but none has really been made till date. So you have the law since 2007, and this is 2023. So in other jurisdictions, you have the regulations that govern the inquest, but we don't here. And so the magistrate, to a large extent, is adapting the system to the court procedure. Now, you heard Mr. Falana talking about final address. In other jurisdictions, what are you doing final address? There is not going to be a judgment because it's findings. And it's going to be more of factual findings. So it's not you coming to cite authority. It's true because when they appoint in other jurisdictions, you have non-lawyers being appointed. So you're coming to cite authority, what for? You know, so we just need to understand this part. The other bit that is also important is that there are situations where you just discover that somebody is missing, whereas the person is dead. Now, an inquest can be conducted where you suspect that this person might have died, possibly they have disposed of the body. So it's not in all cases that it's only when the body is available. So you can write that, well, this is the suspicion you have, that look, maybe this man went to work in this place. People show that he signed, he got to work, and that's the last. Or he was invited to the police station for investigation and you didn't see him again. You know, so, but we need to bear that in mind. The other aspect also is that the one that has to do, particularly with medical negligence or malpractices. Now, you shouldn't, as a lawyer, dabble into it without getting yourself well schooled in what obtains in medicine. Because many of us just get there and then you are perambulating, you are asking an expert in his own field various questions, and then of course he will use the opportunity, you know, to use you and the entire system for an inaugural lecture. So you yourself will need, I remember I was discussing with some professors of medicine. I said, look, you know, we need to set up, you know, a system that you then begin to train lawyers about the thing. They don't want to become doctors, but they need to understand how this thing works. For example, you need to know the difference between a medical investigation that is done by a lab before the thing gets to a doctor so that you know where the problem lies. But sometimes you don't know, just, oh, this person. It could also be, even though the person died, it could not be the fault of a doctor, perhaps the fault of a pharmacist. Because there are cases where there are wrong prescriptions. The pharmacist just did not read what the doctor prescribed, and something else is prescribed. It could be cases where the drug that were given had expired, or because they did not take note of the condition of that patient. I remember somebody saying that, look, they took a sister to a particular hospital, and they've always known she should not be given ephedrine because it causes, yes. And they did in a well-known hospital in Lagos. So there are a number of scenarios like that, but we ourselves need to fully understand this. Now, one of the problems we also have, and I think it came out from what Mr. Falana said, is that in the cases of Dowen, as well as Whitney Adeniro of Chrisland, now, in other jurisdictions when you are having an inquest, even the autopsy report is not made public. Because you see, the moment you say electrocution, everybody say, what else do you want to know? So they lose interest. Because it's part of a process, so you will submit the report only to the coroner, who then, at the end of the day, bring it out that this is what has been revealed by autopsy. But because of press, everybody jumps up and says, oh, we already know the cause. So that doesn't help the system. And then the aspect also is that the families of the deceased, in most cases, are looking at it that when you tell them they should do an inquest, and they ask you what will come out of it, you say, yeah, they just want to know. And say, okay, when we now know what comes out of it. Because these are the cultural things, that what then comes out of it. And like the eminent coroner had said, that even some people look at it now, you have a conflict between your wanting to know and a religious belief. That you are saying that because you want to know, if this man, for example, being a Muslim, is not buried today, you want to deprive him the opportunity of going to paradise. And so they expect that you must make a choice. So because you want to know, he will not get to where he should be going. So these are the things. But the point is this, that we as lawyers need to take a deeper interest. Again, thank you for Mr. Akin George, who is here. But I do not think, given the capacity of Lagos State, the population rather, that even the State Ministry of Justice has the capacity for the kind of inquest, that are necessary in a place like Lagos. Because when you look at it, how many of them are in that unit, and then you are talking of things that happen in Ikorodu, Ekpe, Badagry, and various parts of Lagos. What Mr. Falana said is correct. Yes, we push for the enactment of this law. But the truth also is that the state needs to properly fund this part of it if it's going to be successful. Because we are just scratching the surface, and the reason is you have a few cases that are, brought up in the press. Everybody become interested, but there are quite a number on a regular basis that we don't get to know about. So if we're going to look at it as a major issue, in some jurisdictions, sometimes you look at a list of inquests in a particular day, and you have about 6 to 8. Because everybody just have become, well educated that, look, once you don't know the cause, sudden, suspicious in any form, then you need to get the state to know. And it's not always in every case that they want a prosecution, but that perhaps there is something in the environment that is responsible. So it's not all cases that you want to say, oh, we are looking for the killer. No. It could just be, maybe, for example, there's a food item in the market. I'm sure we've read cases of a woman and her children, they had beans and everybody died. So it could be that, look, some things have just been imported and they are in the market. So if you do the inquest and you do it early enough, because now this is the problem. If it takes too long a time, then there's, when you don't do that, because in our environment, you will possibly believe that maybe when this continues in a particular location, that the witches have taken the certificate of occupancy over that place, and that is what is going on. So it is important that we as lawyers get to properly understand this. And like we said, another angle is this. Lawyers can be appointed as coroner under the law. So when we are talking about this training, that's one of the areas we should understand. And they are not talking of senior lawyers. As a matter of fact, any lawyer of 5 years post-qualification can be appointed. And what becomes necessary is this. A regular magistrate has other cases. His list is heavy. But if you want to get something, and look, the state has a fund to say, look, we want this inquest conducted within 30 days. You possibly have a lawyer that falls within that radar that is able to sit on it. They are also allowed to sit on Saturdays and public holidays. So it's one of the things that is necessary, that if it is done expeditiously, that people will know that it's not a time-wasting exercise. But if it's taking more than 9 months and everybody gets weary. So I believe that it's a major opportunity that we as lawyers should tap into. And sometimes it's not always a penniless venture, or just like Mr. Falana said, after all, who knows whether you two will make Ghanaian president tomorrow. And eventually, your efforts will not go to waste. But I believe that it's a major call for us to support the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenesi, for that insightful contribution. The discussion has been inspired through the practical angle, and also to spice the discussion with academic flavor. I'm going to call my sister, Dr. Folashade Adegbite, who is a lecturer at the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos.
Thank you very much, my brother. Lanet Silk, distinguished seniors, and my good colleagues there. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I am not a guest speaker because this is my jurisdiction. All right. Thank you. Let me go straight because of our time so that I won't go here and there. When I was told about this topic, and I'm going to share platform with these great men, I looked at it. These from the practitioner, the bench, from practitioner. So I said, don't let us all face a particular direction. Let me add a little flavor. And I'm going to address basically medical negligence. That is the area I'm going to be focusing on. Now, my dear Egmont here said that it's not oil and gas. Yes, it's not oil and gas. But you will know the importance of coroner inquest when it comes to medical negligence. Because you can be a victim. I can be a victim. Your loved ones can be a victim. My loved one can be a victim. So we need to do things jointly so as to place some preventive measures so that things will not, if you're climbing a hill and people keep falling down, why not let's look on the hill? Is there a slope? Is there a broken step so that we fix it? That when we're climbing that step and we're climbing that hill, nobody will fall again. Okay, medical, he said, let me be like an academic. I'm a teacher, I'm a lecturer. I find some of my master students here. We all know what medical negligence is. We're not going to go into that, duty of care, breach, and damages, etc. But I'm going to take this because it's going to help us. I want to just describe some forms of negligence, when I say negligence, I know that I'm talking about medical negligence. Because it's going to help us when I come to challenges. And it's going to help us, it's going to prepare our mind that as lawyers, when we have when we have medical negligence cases, things that at times we may need to look beyond inquest. And we should understand what we are going to be doing with the coroner's report. Now, we have misdiagnoses. Some of them has been said. You have people with bowel movement and they say it's cancer, or people with cancer and they say it's bowel irritation. Surgical negligence, we are familiar with that. Anesthesia. There was one very funny case. It's a foreign case, anesthesia error. The man went under the knife. Two forms of secondly, somebody who was not a doctor doing residency, that was not part of the team, just came to say, hello, madam. Read them again because of our time. You can always check them, section 14.1 and section 15. Let me just say section 15, following medical intervention, during or before recovery from anesthesia, from a diagnostic or therapeutic procedure, regardless of time. That's to tell you that even when the patient has been discharged and had gone home, regardless of time, an inquest can still be made when it's medical related. Then any maternal death occurring during or following pregnancy up to 6 weeks postpartum. So if there's any related death of a woman, traditionally they say after 40 days. But any death that occurs between the birth and 6 weeks can still go for coroner inquest. Now, in an inquest, the 4 basic questions that is asked: who, that is the identity of the deceased; where the deceased died, the locality, the location; when, what led to the death; how did the deceased die; event leading to the deceased, including systemic or institutional issues. Because when it comes to medical negligence, at times it may not be a single doctor. They work in group, they work in team. So it could be systemic, it may not even be the group, it could be institutional. In the instance of Adekpeju Ugomasa, you remember the facilities, they don't have some things. They don't have some of those facilities to attend. So at times it could be systemic, at times it could be facility. Okay, then any such indices that will aid or promote better development by leading to a review, introduction of government policy, rules, regulations, bylaw, and primary laws. But majorly, when it comes to medical negligence, the question is how and what. It is not to establish if negligence has occurred or to blame an individual organization, such as the hospital. Although inquests can be the start of a clinical negligence proceeding. So the verdict of an inquest is not that, yes, we've gotten a verdict, the hospital was negligent. No. It's just like something to arm you to start a claim. Then following the inquest, it may be possible to bring a clinical negligence claim for compensation if there is an indictment or indication that the negligence may have caused or contributed to the death. Also, if the inclusion does not identify any failing cause, even if the inquest, that's the beautiful part of it, even if the inquest, that's why I mentioned or tried to explain some of the types of the medical negligences. Even if the inquest is not able to pinpoint, you can still go for claims because some of those things may not be immediate. Okay. I also noted section 26 and 27 talking about the use of postmortem the learned, Your Honor had said so much about the postmortem, the person to conduct the postmortem. Now, let me dwell majorly on two things last. The role of inquest in medical negligence claim. And that is why we should all be aware. The first one is preventive. Preventive. Let us try and use it so that we can forestall and reduce acts of professional negligence. We can reduce acts of misconduct by those ordinarily should be held accountable so that there will be accountability. Then it promotes proper care and attention for the disadvantaged and the weak. And unfortunately, like I said earlier on, that it's not only the disadvantaged and the weak, because if you look at I followed the Peju Ugoma. The man spent heavily. At every point, they will tell him to drop 1.5 million. He will go to another before they attempt to drop 1 point. I can't recall how many times he dropped 1.5 million, as if it's 2020 naira. So at times it's to promote proper care and attention, not just for the disadvantaged and the weak, but for you and I. Then it's for justice. Inquest is for justice. Let's seek justice for the dead. At times when we seek justice for the dead, we are getting closure. We are getting closure, we are getting comfort, we are getting solace. Because at times I look at Adeniran's case. I don't even want to think about it because I have a child like her. And unfortunately, I was telling my Lila Degmoye that a week after the Agege student, my children's school used the stadium at well. But talking about prevention, you know what the school did? The school got 2 ambulances. The school got 3 medical doctors. They got emergency nurses that can do CPR. They got a lab facility. Every of the student that is going to participate in anything, they did a medical test. The parents signed a consent form. You can see a structure is in place. Then I remember I spoke with the principal. I said, don't allow parent race. They said, lie. They are not allowing parent race. They are not allowing staff race. That if children can slum and die, let alone parents that we don't even know their medical records. And I think this is one hint. Mr. Dedokun, you were asking me about the football. This is one hint about it. Okay, take that hint. Then I said it alright. It helps to you get closure. Then at times it's punitive. Some people need to be punished. They need to be punished in order to serve as deterrent to some other people. Then it enhances medical practice. Let's help these people to be diligent. It enhances medical practice, encourages higher standard of care and skill. Then it promotes the notion of accountability by those who, by virtue of their respective functions, are entrusted with a duty of care over others. Then it helps us to generate data. We are able to generate data for planning, for proper policy making, and for law and governance. Then helps in improving institutional facilities, that is hospital, medical labs, etc. Then promotes the enactment of laws. Now, before I go, let's talk about the challenges. And that is where the issue of medical negligence is quite different at times when it comes to coroner inquest, like some other ones. Number one, at times, professional negligence is a bit difficult to gauge. It's a very, very dicey thing. I had somebody did a CS. I won't mention the hospital at Ogba there. And the lady had a rare blood group. And they did the CS. And the lady died. The lady had finished the CS, brought her back, then she started bleeding. I got involved because they were looking for blood area. Of course, eventually they got the giver. The lady died. I was involved in a burial, and it's a church thing. It gave me horror. I said to the husband that we can't allow this to go. Let's challenge it. I wanted to know more. I went to doctors. I said, Doctor, do you do CS without blood? Do you know what the doctor said? He said, it depends. I asked the second one. He said, what? It depends. You know that's why I told you that medical negligence claim is very, very technical and dicey. Compounded with I'll come to that, what we call professional conspiracy. Okay. Yeah. Then the unavailability at time of straight thread of record of treatment. Unavailability of a straight thread of record of treatment and referral. At times, it's some of the contributory factors. Somebody has been in Alagbo and came to primary health care. After, there are no straight thread of record. So at times, it's a challenge when it comes to inquest in medical negligence claim. Inquest, okay? Then, even proof of negligence may not be enough. I want to say something. Proving causation, if we can still go back to our thoughts, causation, it's a very dicey thing when it comes to medical negligence claim, because there are multiple and successive causation. There are multiple and concurrent causation. There are actors intervenees, act of a third party, and so many interferences that may not make it as straightforward as it should be. So that's a big challenge. And another is that doctor may make mistake. We should be careful also, because it's not every mistake that is negligent. If not, we are going to be practicing defensive medicine, whereby the doctor will be looking at the back, looking for you and I, so that will not hang him, and it may not augur well for. Then some negligence may be. Then another one is that some negligence may be difficult to tie to cause of death, yet they are negligent. So at times you may not be able to get them from inquest, but if you need to know it deeply who to call and what to go around it in order to get those facts out. Failure to diagnosis at times may be a difficult thing for an inquest. Failure to monitor a patient. You may not be able to get that one from an inquest. Like I told you, how do you monitor how do you get to the root of monitoring of a patient who is in the hospital? So some of those things are difficult at times to get from the inquest. Those are some of the challenges. And like I said, also professional conspiracy. Then this has been said by the earlier speakers, that lack of competence at times displayed by you and I when it comes to coroner inquest in the court. We are adversarial in nature. We are there. We want to raise objection. We want to frustrate it. We want to seek for adjournment that is so long. And one thing about it is that medical negligence evidence at times, some of them may get destroyed. Some of them may get destroyed because at times we lack the facility to preserve for long. So when they get destroyed, what do? Nothing. So then unfortunately also is that it's both from the bar and the bench. Some of the bar at the bench also, their attitude is same attitude that they take to the normal day-to-day court. They do not attach urgency to some of these inquests. Then low funding. We say those beautiful things. Who funds it? Then another one is sociocultural and religious barriers. I'm not going to emphasize that one. It has been said earlier on. Poor infrastructures. At times we don't have what it takes. Do we have toxicology? Do we have the lab? We don't. Then even DNA. If you're talking of DNA now and we need to do DNA, who will be responsible for it? I think we have in Nigeria now. We still sent to you, but I thought we have one. We have one now. We have one now. Let's celebrate. Let's trust God that, that we have one now. But even at that, who is going to fund it? So then another one is low public awareness. Low public awareness. And the last one is lack of synergy. Lack of synergy among all the structure, among all the practitioners, among the system. There is a structural defect in the running of
certain things so that we can implement. So our role, so that we see how we can implement recommendations. We've been doing inquests. Monday, Tuesday. Yesterday we were in Ekpe. And you dare not go to Ekpe through Ikorodu. So we will fly interstate through Shagamu, Ijebu-Ode, and we're there till 6 p.m. Thank God the coroners factored in this program. Perhaps we'll be in another one. The one that baffled me was that tomorrow, I looked at our diary, we have in a particular court 6 coroners' inquests, 1 court. The only thing that gladdens the heart is that, and then not only that one, that same tomorrow, we have 2 in another court. So for us, it shows there is so much awareness, which is exactly what we need. There is so much awareness and people are coming up. People are not sweeping issues under the carpet anymore. So we appreciate the role of our unit in that regard. We also interface between the coroners and the parties who need the services of the coroner. We interface between parties. Sometimes people don't go straight to the chief coroner. Most times they will write to the office of the Honorable Attorney General, and Attorney General will mail it to the DPP, and of course, DPP through the unit will escalate to the chief coroner. We work with the police also, where there are inclinations of crime, where crime issues are disclosed. In the verdict, we just move ahead and do the needful in that regard. There is an interesting section in the coroner's inquest law. These are has already issued an LA indicating that they intend to prosecute. My personal view on that, actually, I think it should be the other way. The prosecution of any matter should actually wait till the end of fact findings, when the coroner has exhumed, brought out issues for us, and has pointed areas that we need to do something about. We should wait, and then we move on from there. I want to disagree with Leonard Sibda, sir, that coroner is not for the rich. I think the sensitization of the coroner's inquest in Lagos State actually started with the inquest into the cases of the rich. The case of Ojora is a case in mind, and the one that Leonard, His Honor, Magistrate Fadeyi did, Ugboma's case. They are not cheap people. You are hearing that the man was throwing 1 million, 1.5 every week. The case of Ojora is a celebrated case. The rich are actually coming out now, and it's amazing issues that are coming out. Anesthesia error. We have a case like that. A man just drove himself to the hospital. He wanted a little adjustment to his ear. Nothing wrong with him. And preparatory to the surgery, they anesthetized him. They have not done any operation. He just died. And the matter is before the coroner now. A flight engineer because they know the man is so valuable, 70-something-year-old man, they called him, they retained him in service. And they asked him, you are going to go with this flight. He was to close work at the airport around 6 p.m. So he ran home, picked his passport. He told the family, I'm going with a flight. Lagos, Dubai to whatever, and back. A round trip, kind of. And they said that was the story they gave, that he was cleaning something in the engine of the plane. And then he fell. And the family didn't get any. He told them he would be flying. Only for them to get a call from the office that the man is here in Lasut around 2 a.m. 7 a.m. they got there, the man he died. And nobody wants to explain what happened. So many funny issues. So you can see the importance of this kind of knowledge sharing and the role of the coroner. I will just close that I know lawyers, essentially it is about the money. They used to tell us in the law school that no lawyer is poor. But we are seeing many learners, the juggernauts in this profession, they are appearing there now. I don't know who is retaining their services. But this thing, I believe, should move from a motive of something pro bono. If NBA or the legal profession can introduce some things that will encourage lawyers to come into this field, and it will enrich our jurisprudence. I thank you so much for it.
No, not for Mr. George. I was actually going to make a point that in the coroner in which I'm appearing, a counsel on the other side was reading objection to my appearance. That a senior advocate should not come to a magistrate court. So we just don't know. This is an inquest. So I'm just saying that I'm sure Mr. George remembers.
So after Professor Gbenga Kingbenyi, then we'll welcome, I think, 4 questions. 4 questions. Okay. Please, I want to know individuals that are interested. Mr. James Ahibe. Who again? 1. Okay, good. Online? No. Good. So, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Issa Adedoku, for violating my right to silence. Okay. The keynote speaker, Chief Magistrate Fade, retired. Congratulations. Very well. The anesthetic, Satunde Adejugbe, and Dr. Sade Adegbite, the discussants. Well, it's been a very interesting session, and I'm sure we have enjoyed robust discussions on this very engaging, topic. But I dare say that I have a little problem with the efficacy of this coroner's inquest. I've seen it as a chimera, just a window dressing. It's more or less like a toothless bulldog, because it makes a lot of sin and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, when the findings are, delivered, you discover that it actually goes to no effect, so to say. And I'm going to dwell on case studies. And just to show that a lot of things need to be done, to give some efficacy to the findings of a coroner, especially in this jurisdiction. Okay, like I know that there is no adherence to the strict evidential rules. That's a weakness. But also, the coroner does not have criminal jurisdiction to adjudicate if there is a finding of, culpability or whatever in their inquest. So, apart from submitting your report to the chief coroner, who does whatever he or she wants to do with it. But the problem is that what becomes of an inquest? The report. What becomes of an inquest report? That's very, very important. Now, okay, I'll take us back to sometimes, I think 2005. And that's the case of late Alaba Joseph's case. Okay, Alaba Joseph was the MD of Mobitel telecommunications company, and there was judgment against that company, and it was at the verge of receivership. The court bailiff and Lalen San, Kemi Pinero. So they were there at the premises to execute the receivership order, and in the process, they found the lifeless body of Alaba Joseph within the premises. Okay, there were two theories. Okay, the first place they said there was a hole on the forehead which suggested gunshot. Then it was also alleged that the man wanted to run away, not to stand the shame of receivership, not to cooperate or whatever. And in the process of jumping from the story building, his head hit the floor, and that was what led to, the death. So it became a very serious issue, and there was a pathologist. I'm sure the man is still there, Obafunwa, Professor Obafunwa, one-time Vice Chancellor, well-respected pathologist. So he was the one engaged to conduct the, autopsy or whatever. And the man found that it was actually a bullet hole. Fine. But because of the caliber, the economic standing of the people that were involved, you see, because when they were saying that Coroner is not for rich, it's for, when the rich ones were involved, when they are involved, they will frustrate it. They will frustrate it. So, the Inspector General of Police took over that case because they were all in detention. All those, that were involved in bringing the bailiff and whatever for the execution. So they detained all of them, including a colonel in the army. So, at a stage, the IG took over. And the IG engaged one Professor Oba from University of Ife, OAU, to Odugbeson, no, not Odugbeson, a professor from OAU was engaged to take over the Odesami very well. Odesami conducted, also a well-respected pathologist, conducted his own, findings and came up with the fact that it was a death that resulted from a misadventure, from a fall from a high. So, okay, now you can see the contradiction. This is very interesting. You can see the contradiction. Two renowned, foremost pathologists, with different results. So the confusion was much. The IG said, well, based on Odesami's report, he said they should release all the detainees and that he has closed the case. But it was not so. Then the issue of inquest came up. And that was when the chief magistrate, Odugbeson, was appointed as an inquest in that case. And because of the contradictory reports, they had to engage the services of the Nebraska Institute of Forensic Science in the US to conduct that, examination. Even though some of the tissues were already, but then eventually they came up with a report that corroborated Obafunwa's account. So Odugbeson submitted her report to the registrar, the coroner or CJ or whatever. But I can assure you that, based on that report, those that have been released were supposed to be rearrested and prosecuted. But nothing happened on that case till we speak. Nothing happened. That was the end of that case. The coroner's report was submitted, and it indicted some people. They are still in this society, and we see them. Okay, there was a case of Modebayo Awoshika, who was an employee of First Bank, and he died in a very controversial Lekki Ekpe Expressway. An inquest was set up, presided over by Ojo Phillips, the chief magistrate. And the inquest indicated there was a finding that one police sergeant or so shot Awoshika. The chief magistrate, the coroner, requested that the commissioner of police should produce that policeman. He did not comply. And that was the frustration of that case. The inquest was frustrated. The chief magistrate was talking about non-cooperative attitude of some, high and mighty. So then the third one, because I don't want to waste your time, is this issue of synagogue, Church of Nations. Sometimes I think it was in 2014 that over 100 people died in a 6-story building at the synagogue, premises. And inquest was conducted, and some of the engineers were found negligent, as leading to. I think there was a time prosecution commenced or whatever, but I'm not sure it has seen the light of the days. As in the process, the founder died, but as we speak, thank God, Mr. George is here. I don't know if there is any progress on that prosecution. So that is the problems that we have. Inquest is fine, but to what extent are we allowed to have unfettered freedom to conclude an inquest, to conduct an inquest? To what extent is the report even given any recognition or, made use of, and so on and so forth? Then, when somebody was talking about paucity of, it was Mr. George, who was saying that they don't have enough hands, and there are so many cases around. But the problem again is the paucity of pathologists, that is morbid anatomists. You see, in a study which I conducted in 2016, I discovered that we had only 200 morbid anatomists in Nigeria with a population of 160 million as at that time. So it was an average, when you talk of the ratio, of 1 anatomist to 1 million people. So you can see, can we say that is sufficient? And that is why when you give them some findings to make and submit report, it takes longer time than necessary because they don't have enough hands. So it's a problem that we have, So I just want to chip in some of these things. I've actually done some work on Coroner's Inquest. I published in Current Law series in 2006 and University of Uyo in 2016, still on Coroner. So it's a very good idea, and I think that something can still be done. Like, the AG, you mentioned the AG having powers to make regulations and so on. So, that aspect can be explored. so that they can give a bit of greater efficacy, to the efforts of the coroners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. By the way, I forgot to mention that Professor Benga Akingbeyin is a professor of public law at the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos, specializes in criminology. So when you talk of C. Lombroso, Professor Akingbeyin can draw the anatomy of C. Lombroso. Thank you, sir, Eminent Professor, for your intervention. Now, thank you for that. So I will just call on Mr. Aigbe, James Aigbe, for his question. That's all. And after that, we call on the alternate chairman of CLE, Mr. Dari Folano, for the vote of thanks.
I'll start on the existing protocol. Professor, you touched about the efficacy of coroner inquest. I want to completely agree with you. I doubt if they are efficacious, the inquest, because there's a section of the law which provides expressly, very clearly, that the verdict of coroner inquest cannot be a basis for prosecution of persons. In the Senator case, for instance, I was part of the legal defense team. At a stage, I became the coordinating counsel for the legal team, made up of about 4 senior advocates. Part of the verdict was that some engineers should be prosecuted. We filed an action for judicial review because we felt the coroner inquest exceeded its jurisdiction. The current Chief Judge of Lagos State upheld our position and quashed that aspect of the verdict. So, if a coroner inquest cannot recommend people for prosecution, you still have to submit the report to the police for investigation. And it is the outcome of the police investigation that can form a decision by the DPP office whether certain people should be prosecuted. So why do you go through the rigors, the problem of sitting for several months? At the end of the day, you cannot proceed to prosecute anybody. That is one. Secondly, do we really think, I want to believe that the jurisdiction of the coroner is at large. It depends on who is making the request. How do you define an unnatural occurrence, natural death? Somebody was electrocuted. What is unnatural death? People get electrocuted. So why must it be a subject of can the police investigate such an incident and proceed against people who are negligent? Or is the coroner inquest intended to ensure compensation for victims or for the families of the dead? So these are my questions that are not clear to me, that I want the discussants to address. Thank you.
Last person. Oh, okay.
No, you can come. Well, thank you, Mr. Aigbe. I think we should not mix up two things. Now, we started by saying the inquest is more factual findings, and it is to say who died, what was the cause of death. Now, in the process of that, if for example, somebody say he was pushed, that will now be a basis of an investigation. But you cannot initiate criminal proceedings against anyone and simply say there is no investigation because of the inquest. You will still need to invite, because at that stage now, when everybody goes before the inquest, there is no suspect. no suspect. It is for the purpose of criminal proceedings that you use the word as a suspect, who is then arrested, who is now confronted with certain allegations. So you cannot say, oh, because there's coroner inquest, automatically go and charge. Because you must follow, when you are crossing over to criminal proceedings, you have to. But even at that, the synagogue example you gave, the fact that that aspect of the verdict was quashed will not stop the state from prosecuting. And they are prosecuted because I know that there was a charge. You are in the matter. So it's not, so the coroner cannot say A, B, C, and D are the people that we think committed this, but the circumstances that led to the death will come out of that verdict. Now, if you take an example, you say somebody went to a restaurant to eat, and then after taking the food, he started vomiting and died. Now, in that process, you are not able to say it's the owner of the restaurant that poisoned, but there is a circumstances, and if they now establish, now the owner can also say, well, I bought the rice last night, and no other person died that had the food. So the point we are making is this. It is factual finding. When you make those findings, it now gives, perhaps instead of nobody knows what to focus on, perhaps it narrows what you then focus on, and then in that line, you can identify some people that you think need to be investigated and prosecuted if need be.
Sorry, what I wanted to add, what we said there is that at times if you look at some of these shortcomings, it's a reflection of the society we are. Coroner Inquest is operating within Nigeria. And so all the shortcomings, I saw you took us through history. So many things. We know the interplay of so many hyper things. So many corruption and so many things. But it's a reflection of the society we are.
Just a minute. Perhaps I should add my own again. Yes, I was going to mention what my lady here mentioned. I think beyond all that, the coroner's court is a change agent. Mr. Falano, SAN mentioned, the schools involved in certain ongoing inquests have already begun effecting changes, buying ambulances, restricting certain people from doing certain things, bringing in professionals to man their clinics and all that. So those are important. If there hadn't been a coroner's court, we wouldn't have had all that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, NSIC. Your Honor, senior colleagues and distinguished colleagues. Particularly, my question is on medical negligence. My understanding is that once there is a case of medical negligence, one will have to petition the Council of Medical and Dental Council. But when for some steps to be taken, some inquiries, when Dr. Adegbite was speaking, she did mention that when there is an inquest and there is an indictment, a person can proceed to court with that indictment. So my question now is whether that automatically boycotts that process of having to petition the medical council. Thank you.
Well, you're talking about another procedure or process entirely. You're talking about liabilities. Now, you can talk two routes. You can go to the tribunal. And the tribunal, I was telling my brother here that some of these things, I don't like going to tribunals at the time because after all said and done, the guy gets 3 months suspension. 3 months suspension, the victim or the victim's family is not compensated, nothing, because it's not within the jurisdiction of the tribunal. You can go to the court. You have that under thought. You can go to the court for liability, civil liability or consumer protection, to get compensation. But the court will not withdraw the license of the practitioner. If you want that, you go to the tribunal. If you want compensation or whatever damages, you go to the court.
Even some of the findings of, let's say, the dental and medical practitioners, whatever, some of their findings became useful. Like in the case of Ugoma, I reviewed a lot of the evidence they took. I can tell you this big. And it was useful to at least contradict some of the testimonies from certain people here. Here you admitted, you said this, you admitted this position. Why have you changed? They were not expecting the court to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, before I call on Mr. Oludari Falana to give the vote of thanks, I just want to say that to put the discussion into perspective, this is the summary of what our eminent discussant and the keynote speaker had informed this session today. The coroner is a judicial officer saddled with the responsibility of investigating cases of sudden or suspicious death within its territory with a view to unraveling the identity and time of death of the deceased, as well as the nature and circumstances of such deaths, with a view of coming up with a verdict and also recommendations, which may in turn lead to the prevention of a future occurrence of such deaths and also to effect a change in government policy. Now, be that as it may, the current legal framework for coroner inquest in Lagos State is the Coroner Systems Law 2015, and it's currently applicable in Lagos State. Now, fundamentally, the coroner is not about how, no, it's not about why, but how. Thank you. Mr. Oludari Father now, kindly come for vote of thanks. Oh, Chairman.
I'm sorry. Learning Six, I think we should use this opportunity to tell the members about our law week. Yeah. So the law week of the branch is starting 9th of June. It's between 9th and 16th of June. And on our platforms, we have some of the programs flying already. And there's a dinner card. The dinner is on Friday, 16th. The card is selling for 20,000 naira, but financial young lawyers of the branch, you're buying for, okay, the first 40 get 50%, Learning Sixer, the first 40, to pick up the cards. You can meet the bar clerk, Queen here, or you can call the social secretary or any other officer of the branch. But we have the information on our various platforms. Thank you very much.
So, and also the keynote speaker had promised that he had sent the soft copy of his lecture today, and I'm going to send to all our WhatsApp platforms. Please, if you know you are members of this branch and you are not on our WhatsApp platforms, kindly write your WhatsApp phone numbers with the admin secretary, Mrs. Adiyemo, so that we can add you on WhatsApp and also send the lecture notes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our keynote speaker, Your Honor, Magistrate MK Ofadeyi, other discussants, our revered Mr. Tunde Adejuigbe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and Dr. Mrs. Folashade Adegbite. We thank you very much for coming around. Before I go further, I also must mention, sir, with due respect, that if Your Honor will recall, sir, the first coroner inquest in Lagos was done by me while I was with Mr. Femi Falana, and you were the coroner at that time. This was 2009, the case of Kayode Oyedeji, who was gruesomely murdered.